we'll move into our presentation. Thank you all for coming late on this Thursday afternoon. Seems like a Monday for me. But today is the second one of our Lex Advanced series for this semester, which is a repeat from last semester. We're going to be talking about release conditions today. And Elizabeth and I will be your presenters. Jay, I'm assuming, will be our voice of the chat. And as usual, if you do tweet, I invite you to join the conversation about educational technology. You can use the hashtag #EdTech. Our theme for this academic year is resilience. So you can use the hashtag resilience and tag @ZulaCat. And so I'd like to know, do you use release conditions? Are you using them? I'm going to set up a poll, start a poll. All right, so I think you should see the poll. All right, how many people do we have? 3, 4. All right, I think everybody that's in the session has answered. And it looks like, share the results. So 60% of you said yes, you do use release conditions, and 40% do not. And we didn't get anybody that says what's a release condition. So at least you gotta know what a release condition is. All right, I'm going to stop sharing the results. All right. So release conditions basically allow you as the instructor to create a custom path through your course materials. So you set up the path or how you want students to be able to move through your course. You set conditions that the learners will have to fulfill before they can access certain things, which you decide what that is. And Elizabeth is going to show you how she uses release conditions in her course. She's going to show you how to create them.
So we always like when we do these kind of workshops on Brightspace to have it to show you some things and the way they're used so that you can have schemas for it before we even start, getting into the nitty-gritty about how to use them well. So I am going to share my screen. And we are going to, and I want you to see, so can everybody see my Summer 1 2020 Intro to Psychology course? Okay, great. So I'm just going to show you 2 different courses and how I've used release conditions in these courses. Like Janice said, it's a way to just kind of set it up where there's a pathway for the students in the course. So for my Intro Psych course this summer, it was fully asynchronous online. Okay, so it was not a remote course. I wasn't meeting them regularly. It was fully asynchronous. So because of that, when I click on content, and I am not viewing this as a student. I am viewing this as a student. I'm sorry, viewing this as a student. When I clicked on content, you can see I had it set up where I had weekly modules because it was a 5-week summer class, right? And so each week, this is week 1 that I'm on now, each week it was set up the exact same. It had a checklist for what they need to do for the week. It had a discussion topic. It had a take-home point video. It had the next chapter discussion topic, next video, and then it had a weekly quiz. And so, stop viewing as a student real quick. And so for this, I had it set up where they had to take a practice quiz to take their weekly quiz. All right, so you saw when I was viewing as a student, it didn't have this information here because what they would do is they would click on the info about weekly quiz 1. It had a description of what the quiz was going to be like, and there was a release condition. So for this quiz, for this class, they had to take this 0-point non-graded practice quiz before the quiz would even be released to them each week. And I know this says quiz 2 right here because I was recreating this for us today. But we, so each time it was like a 5-question, just kind of silly quiz, kind of fun, and they'd have to take this before they would take the weekly quiz. And that's a really good practice that Janice, of course, has taught us over the semesters, that if you're going to use the quizzing in Brightspace, it's good to have a practice quiz so that students can work through any kind of the tech glitches before they log into their quiz and their timing starts, right? So that's how I used it the first time. Or in this class, I used it as making them take this practice quiz. And I had them do it every single weekly quiz, every time I had them take this practice quiz, just to be sure they're working through their computer glitches. All right, so now let's look at my health psych course. This is my health psych course from last semester. This was a mixed mode course. Students could take it in person or remotely, so it was synchronous. So I set this one up a little different, and I used the quiz, I used the release conditions a little differently as well. So if you click on this and you go to content, you can see here I set this up as units, as opposed to weeks, because it worked better for me in the semester. You can see I had quizzes where I had release conditions for them to take the practice quiz before they took the quiz. Same thing like I did in the summer. But what I wanted to show you is that I did differently this time is my final exam. And my final exam, I actually set up a survey as a release condition where they could not access the final exam until they took the final exam honor code, until they checked the honor code. So viewing as a student, they could click on this, but nothing would show up until they clicked on the final exam honor code. And if you click on that, it was a survey. Oh, shoot, see, it's not. Oh, let me see if it will show, if I'm viewing as a student. I'm about to create one and you can see what it looks like. But here, click on the final exam honor code. There it goes, viewing as a student. And it says by clicking agree below, you're indicating that you agree to the following. And it's just got all my honors and integrity rules that I had for this final. So if I click I agree and I submit that survey, then now when I go to final exam, it will release the final exam to me. But I had it set up where they could not access the final exam at all until they did the integrity survey. And that was a release condition I set up using a survey. So I wanted you to see that one because it was a little different than it's the other one where they had to take a practice quiz before they could take their real quiz. This one, I set it up as a survey they had to agree to as the honor code before they got the exam because it was a take-home exam. I'm going to pause here before I show you how I set those up to see if you have any questions about those two uses of release conditions. I'm going to count to 7. I'm also going to pause here and say those of you who have used release conditions before I move forward and kind of show you real quick how to set one up. How did you use it? Just unmute yourself and share. How did you use it?
Harish is actually, or sorry, Abba was actually asking where you got the language for your honor code.
Good question. So if you look, so in my final exam, I'm sure you've been to some of Jay's workshops on transparent assignments. So I set this up using the transparent assignment template. And so part of that is got in here academic integrity things. You have to use your own words, no direct quotes. And then I have a whole academic integrity statement in here. You can't discuss the exam at all with your classmates because it was open book, open internet, the whole 9 yards. So what I did, Abba, is I took the information from the assignment and created it myself. So it was all academic integrity information that was embedded in the assignment. And then I
sorry,
took
this
it.
is off topic, but
That's fine.
we have been doing a lot of discussion about cheating and how to stop it. And so I think we brought up the topic of having an honor code being signed by the students. because we don't get it signed at Xavier. But that topic got dissipated. I mean, nobody responded to what should be done. It wasn't a big discussion group. It was just a few of us in the surge discussion meeting. So I was just wondering if we can do something about having an honor code, for the online classes. But I just was wondering, we have this academic integrity pledge and everything, but
yeah, I think that I think it needs to be done at the college level, right? We have an academic integrity policy that you could definitely use. You could definitely embed this in here and just say, yes, I've read it, right? Here's the academic integrity policy of the college, and click, I have read it, I have not read it. And they have to say they've read it before they can move on. You could do that now, right? Because that's kind of the best we have at the college level. But I think too, you could do it at the departmental level, come up with an honor code for you as a department. Or if you've got coordinated classes, you could even do it at the coordinated class level. Here's the honor code for this coordinated class, and work with your colleagues and do this. It's just being really transparent and honest with the students about what they can expect and making it really clear before they even access the exam.
All right. So before I let you go, I have created a Google form. Probably I'll send you that so you can take a look at it and the wordings and maybe give me feedback on that.
I'll be happy to, but and you know what I'm going to also say is let's also pass it by your department. I'm happy to do it from a CAT perspective, but you live in your department, so be sure that your colleagues are on board. But yeah,
yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
But we'll be happy to look at that. But that's what I wanted to just share real quick. Is just two different ways you can use it in my classes. So somebody else who's used release conditions, do you mind unmuting and saying how you've used them?
Oh, I'm sorry. I would add to that also.
Yeah.
So I used a release condition. I had a quiz where they had to read through the syllabus before taking the quiz. And the quiz was the only thing that was visible to them. And it didn't matter what score they got, as long as they did the quiz, then the content of the all the modules were visible to them. Yep. But that was just one time at the beginning of the course that I did. That was it.
Yep. And
I was just playing around with release conditions. And I thought, why not?
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that courses where they all the students can see when they first log in the first time is the syllabus. That's it. And or their get started here button and the syllabus under that. And once they've worked through that, then the rest of the class opens up. Or like you saw here, I've got in my health site class, I have all these units, right? I could have set it up where you have to finish everything in Unit 1 before Unit 2 releases itself. Unit 3 releases itself. Like it's really a rich tool that you can use and really set up your course, how your course would best meet your learning objectives. I would also say be sure as we're learning this tool that the learning objectives are first in the front of your mind as you're doing this.
That's
okay, let me show you.
Research.
Yes, Stephanie.
That's what I did for advanced research because it's a little bit self-paced. I mean, there's a general guideline, but technically you can turn your proposal in later than I recommend and still pass. It's happened before. So they can't do the progressive unit until they've completed the prior unit and submitted and gotten a score for it. And there's one where there's absolutely you must get my approval before proceeding. It's the IRB part, Institutional Review Board. And so you cannot submit your data or do anything else until I approve you to start submitting your IRB stuff.
It would be a great thing, not to talk too much in-house shop here, but a great thing, as soon as you said that, I'm going to make it where they can't get their SONA instructions until they submit their IRB. So you can't get the instructions on placing it on SONA.
That's what I did, but I have to go back in. I don't remember how I did that one.
It's great. That's a great use of it. Beth, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I have used them in this methods class that I'm teaching right now. Each week they have a final kind of discussion post that's supposed to pull together their reading and the lecture and any research exercises that they've done. And I've set it so that won't release until they've done certain things within that module for the week. But I also I have some questions about that I seem to be able to peg that to certain things if it's an assignment or a survey, but not other things like watching a lecture or doing certain kinds of discussion posts. So that is a bigger question than I have for whenever you get to it. But
Great.
I also want to know about Stephanie's sort of unit placing, because obviously with the methods class, I think we have some similarities. And so I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah. Janet, I'm keeping my eye on the time because Janice only gave me a certain amount of time. Let's do this. I'm going to kind of move forward because Beth, we're definitely going to hit your part about what all can you hook up together, what all can be released. We're going to talk about that. And then we've got some time for some discussion at the end. And then maybe you and Stephanie can connect then, because I think that I want to hear about it too, actually, because I think in a methods class where you're building, any kind of class where you're building up to a final project, you might want to release it a little bit and make it, make it more digestible. Now, on the other hand, it can also be nice for students to kind of have the big picture too. So you have to decide, again, what works best for your objectives. But thanks you guys. Let me stop viewing as a student. I'm just going to real quick, so this will be a refresher for many of you, and then maybe for some of you the first time you've seen it, but a refresher for many of you. So let's say, I'm just going to create I'm going to do a release condition on an assignment. Okay. So I'm going to go to assignments here, and this little, I don't know, it looks like a flambeau to me. It's in the Mardi Gras spirit. This is means there's a release condition on it. So you can see I have a release condition on both my midterm and my final. I'm going to make a new assignment right this moment. I'm going to call it workshop example. And my instructions are X, Y, Z. Remember, you can add an attachment. You can do anything here. I'm going to make an individual assignment. It's a file. They can do it unlimited. I keep all this. I'm not going to link it to a category right now because this is just an example. I'm going to say that there's 100 points. I'm not going to link it, if you don't mind, to a grade item because, this is a sample. Okay, but I should link it to a grade item, right? Do your grade book first, then you create these. I could add my rubric here. Okay. So I'm creating this assignment. Now here, when you go to restrictions, this is where you put the due date, right? I'm going to unhide it from users. I'm going to say it has a due date of right now. Here's where you attach the release conditions, okay? And so I'm going to create and attach a release condition. And I'm going to say, I'm actually going to do it to score on a quiz. And I'm going to say, in order to get this sample thing, they have to have quiz 6, and they have had to have gotten 60, right? That's, greater than or equal to 60 in order to move forward, right? And then I say create.
I think that's less than, huh?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Let's do that. Thank you, my computer science friend. All right, greater than or equal to 60 on this quiz before they can take this sample assignment XYZ. All right, then I go create. And now I can see, now I would have caught my own mistake here because it's telling me in words that it's greater than or equal to 60. I'm being sure that's okay. And then I'm going to save and close this. And now under assignments, you can see workshop example, and you can see it right here. It has a release condition and the due date of today. This was from earlier when I was playing around. Okay, so it's the same. So when you do it from an assignment or from anything where you're attaching this, it's usually under this restrictions tab. And okay, I'm just going to show some more time. Great, there we go. I added my name. Okay, it's going to let me do it. Yeah, here. And it's under here, under the release conditions.
Elizabeth, while you're on that page, if it's the same release condition, so you're applying the same release condition to something else, then you would choose that other button that says attach existing. So that way you don't have to recreate it again. And you can choose from the list. Yeah.
And here you can see so I had my my honors codes. Now mine were different because I had different exams and I had different requirements. I had this cumulative quiz on a pledge. Those were all surveys. But here you can see, here's my practice quiz. Here's my practice quiz 2. Here's the one we just created about greater than or equal to 60 on the October 6th. So you could also do it from existing or you create new. Very easy right here. And it's not a scary thing to do because it once you say okay, it shows you on that restriction page what the release condition is, and if it's not what you meant, you just hit the little X and it deletes it before you save it. Yep. Okay, that was a refresher. I'm turning back over to you now, Janice.
And so, as Elizabeth was mentioning, with release conditions, there are certain tools in Brightspace that you can attach a release condition to. And these are the tools. So, like Elizabeth was working with the assignments and she attached a release condition to that. There was an example of her quiz, attach a release condition to that. So these are all of the tools in Brightspace that you can attach a release condition to.
And Beth, I think I just want to pause on that slide, Janice, if you'll back up. I think that's what you were getting at, right? What all can you do with release conditions? So like you can make it where students have to do something before an announcement's released to them that then says, okay, here's your next step.
Right, correct. All right, and so you can attach several release conditions to an item. So for example, the final exam is released if the students complete all of the previous assignments and attain a score of 65% or higher for every quiz. Then they can see the final exam. Yeah, Elizabeth was using her example where they had to do the survey and take the honor pledge before the final exam was released. You can attach multiple release conditions to an item, and they only have to meet one of those conditions. So for example, your week 2 module could be released to learners if they completed their week 1 assignment, or they did a score of 75% or higher, excuse me, on the week 1 quiz, or they created a discussion thread in the week 1 discussion forum. So it could be multiple conditions, and they only have to meet one of those conditions in order for that to be released. So one of the conditions must be met, or all of the conditions must be met. So you cannot apply a release condition for a situation where perhaps so many out of so many of something needs to be met. They don't have the option to do that. So it's either one of the conditions has to be met or all of the conditions that you attach have to be met. And these are release condition types. In other words, these are tools that can serve as a release condition. So you can release an assignment based on students going through certain content in your course. I want to release something to maybe students who are in a certain group. Any number of things. A discussion, they contributed to a discussion, posted a thread in the discussion forum, and now I want to release something to them. So I mentioned competencies here, but we don't have the competencies component in our Brightspace system. So you're going to see that in there. We can't just eliminate it. You'll see it there, but we actually don't have the competencies. So wherever you see that, we don't have that. That's not applicable to us.
Hey, Jess, before you move off of this one, so I just want to be sure. So this is saying that release condition types. They can serve as a release condition. So this is, I can say you have to earn a certain badge or award before the final exam is released to you. Or, so content. Beth is asking, how does the content release condition type work? And I think that's what Stephanie's talking about, right? Like for the content, like you have to have gone through and get that little check mark of everything that's in week 1 before week 2 will show.
Right.
Is that correct?
That's correct. And as a matter of fact, I have a slide here that'll go through exactly how that works in terms of content. As soon as I tell you about grades. So for the condition type of grades, you can meet the criteria that they get a certain grade value on a grade item. So you saw Elizabeth when she was saying you had to have a score of greater than or equal to 60%. No grade has been received for something. A released final grade score or score on associated rubric. Now you may recall when you are creating a grade item in Brightspace, there are about 6 of them. The grade item types that work with this grades condition type are numeric, select box, and the pass fail. The other grade item types don't work or not available as a part of the release condition. So if you have, for example, a calculated column, you will not be able to use whatever's being calculated in that column to trigger your release condition. So as I said, the only grade item types are numeric, select box, or pass or fail. So the question about content is going to be, can be released if a student has visited a content topic, visited all of the content topics, not visited a content topic, completed or not completed. And visited is going to be determined by the completion tracking method that is selected by you. And the default completion tracking method is automatic, but you can set that to manual, and I'll show you how that's done in a moment. And the method of completing a topic depends on what type it is. So submitting an assignment, they would actually have to submit something to the assignment submission folder for that to be completed. So it really depends on the content type. All right.
Hey, and Jess, before you move from this, so I'm assuming like if I want a student to watch a lecture video before they move on, all Brightspace can really capture is did they open that link, right? They can't capture whether they watched the whole thing. They captured, okay. But they can capture, it does capture whether they opened it.
Whether they click, yeah. If they clicked on the link, yes. But there's no way for Brightspace to say, yeah, the student did watch this. They were sitting in front of the computer watching it the whole time. Brightspace cannot tell you that. Yes, Jay.
And Stephanie had, I think, a comment just about trouble with the visited all. But I think what Janice means there is that you can select each of the modules individually, right? And say, or like submodules or pages within a module, right? You can't select week 1 and just say, did they do everything in week 1? You'd have to have a separate release.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. All means all in the course.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. And so that being said, we're going to take a look at my course real quickly. So here in my Sandbox course, I have a week 2 module. There's a description about what this particular week is supposed to cover. And then I have a number of topic items here. So this one is their textbook, which is an OER. And if you look here, the information, this will take the students to that OER, but this says you're going to read chapter 3 for this week. Then they have to watch some videos. So there are 3 videos to watch. There's an assignment that they need to submit to an assignment submission folder. There's a discussion they need to post to. This is a journal. And then there's a test for that week. So there's a link here to this guide for taking tests in Brightspace. And then there is this practice quiz that they have to take before they will be able to gain access to the actual quiz. And then quiz 1 is the actual quiz that they would be taking. And notice here, and that does look like a little flambeau. This says that all conditions must be met, so release conditions are set on quiz number 1. The student has to complete 1 attempt on this practice quiz, but they also have to visit this content topic guide to taking tests in Brightspace, and we'll talk about how that visited gets marked complete. I also have, following that, this how to view a completed test submission. So when they're finished the quiz, they would be able to go back to that quiz, and there's a submission view that they could see. And here's some instructions that says about 32 hours after the end of the testing period, you'll be able to go back. And so there's a release condition attached to this. So this will be released when they've completed 1 attempt on quiz 1. There's a checklist, and then here's an item. Just a moment to take a breath. All right, so what you may notice here is over on the right, and this is probably something you might not have paid a whole lot of attention to. This is the completion tracking, and by default, it is automatic. So if I click on this item is something that is required, and when the student clicks on this link, it's going to be registered automatically that they visited this. These, where they watch the video, are required, but it's a manual acknowledgement that the student watched this video. So there would be a little checkbox. Now, right now I'm looking at this as the instructor, and I'll show you what it looks like as in the student view. So there are 3 of them that are manual, and then these with the check marks are automatic. And then this last one is not something that is required. It is just an optional item. So students, when you're looking at this in the instructor view, you can see the requirements for the release condition because that is being presented to you. Students actually don't see that. And so you would have to somehow let them know that they need to do something in order for content to be released. And how you approach that is really going to be dependent upon, I guess, the format of your course. If you're meeting the students remotely during a regular class period, you can tell them. Otherwise, you'd be have to put some information in your course to let them know that you need to do something in order for something else to happen. You may recall in the Learn Everywhere Zula course, in the Get Started Here module, we mentioned that there were things that were going to be released based on your doing certain things. And then in each module, where appropriate, we repeated the fact that you need to do X, Y, and Z in order for your reflection to be released to you. And so if I view this as a student, and I go back to my content area, the visited and complete has to do with this progress bar. And so right now the system is acknowledging that 2 out of 10 topics are complete. Not every topic is actually being shown here. Those things that have not been released yet does not go into this progress bar. Once whatever is done that would cause the item to be released, then this progress bar would be updated. So those that have a manual completion have a little box here that the student would actually have to check. And then those that have not been visited will have the little dot here And then, like I said, this one here is just something that is optional. They don't have to do that one. I
Janice,
see some
there's,
questions.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a
Mhm.
question in the chat about what do y'all think is the benefit of making something manual versus automatic?
I am not necessarily going to get into the benefit of it. You have the option to do that. If you make it manual that the student has to check it, then you'll have to make sure that they know that they have to do that in order for something else to be released to them if that's the case. So this checkbox is much like Elizabeth's honor code, where the student had to take a survey and you have to answer the question, yes, I'm going to adhere to the honor code. So it's a way to force them to, check off something, acknowledge that, yes, I have done this. Elizabeth or Jay, if you have something that you can add.
Stephanie, I'm trying to think of that, and I'm trying to think. I think there might be cases like, so remember that Brightspace is used like K through 12 all the way, through college. So I think there might be cases where student accountability, like wanting students to be accountable, might be part of the objective, and it might be useful. It could be a little bit of accountability, like with a lecture video, instead of just like it automatically saying you did it because you opened it. At least they have to come back and say they watched it. But those are the only things. I'm kind of racking my brain. I can't think of anything else. Can you, Jay?
I would say the accountability. I mean, I'm having this problem with my X-Core class because I've got a lot of stuff I'm posting that I want them to do, and sometimes they're doing it, and sometimes they're obviously not necessarily doing it. So, I kind of wondering if I turned it on to manual, if I could then say, hey, you check this, you told me you did this, and it's clear to me you didn't do this, as opposed to it's automatic, right?
And Janice, Beth has a question that I have had before. Thank you, Beth. So when we go as instructors, when we have messed around with our class, right, we've looked at everything, checked everything out, it always shows us it's 100% complete, right? We've completed our modules. And it's like when we go back and we give feedback, we've completed our modules. Is there a way to undo this completion and look at it like as a fresh new student? Like you have to be able to do that in this course, no?
No.
Well, no, Beth.
That's stinky.
The short answer, yes, is no.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
And there's probably a number of reasons for that, but yeah. I do want to quickly say, so the way that we're seeing this course, I'm in a web browser and I'm looking at it this way. Students, if they were looking at this same course, the same module in the Pulse app, they would see the week 2 module with everything that they have to do listed like this. Notice none of the information that I have in the description actually shows to the student. So basically all they have is whatever you have, whatever the name of that topic is. So see here for the textbook, this is an OER. Remember I said it was an OER, and in the description I said you need to read chapter 3. So the student would actually have to do some digging around to figure out what it is I need to do. So you may want to keep in mind that when you are setting up your topics, if you put more information there that could help the students to figure out what it is you're asking them to do, because like I said, they may be using the Pulse app. So if we look at, for example, this week 4, this is that same textbook, but then I've just added read chapter 6, right? So I just wanted to mention that that's something that you may want to take into consideration. The students here could actually view this through what's called the course homepage in the Pulse app, and then they could see it more like it appears in a web browser, but most of the time they're just plowing through right here in this view. All right. Okay. So do we have any questions before we move on?
There's just a quick question about what the Pulse app is.
The Pulse app is an app that the students can use on their mobile device. They don't have to use the Pulse app to access Brightspace. They can just log into a web browser on their mobile phone if they wanted to, but that Pulse app is an app that the students can use to log in and see their courses and get notifications and whatnot on their mobile device. All right.
And Beth asked how many students are using it. You should ask your students. Mine, a lot of mine use it because they like it. If we put in due dates, then through the Pulse app, there's a calendar that kind of shows them all their due dates on any given day in one spot. So a lot of my students like it. But part of why we went with Brightspace is they don't have to have an app. In order to use Blackboard on your phone, you would have to have that app, and it was a real problem. They can just go to learn.zula.edu on their phone, and many of them do that, but some of them do it through the app.
Right. And so as Elizabeth is explaining, if they look at it in the Pulse app, then they would see something like this, which kind of tells them where things are due, and so they can kind of plan out, their schedule or whatever, the activities, things that they need to check on. So a lot of them do use this Pulse app. And so on this cat food blog, there is a blog post, is your course Pulse friendly? So you may want to make your course Pulse friendly. All right. And we did have an activity. I don't know that we're going to have time to do it. We kind of shared. Well, let's try it. I'm going to drop in the chat if I can find the chat. The link that I put in the chat should be to this Jamboard. Does it work? Yes. Okay. You all are fast. It says post at least 2 sticky notes, but let's just do one. Describing one action or activity that you would like to add release conditions to.
Janice, it's got us view only. It's got us view only.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, Lord.
Anyone can.
Maybe we can post it in the chat.
Yeah, just put it in the chat. Thank you. We'll scrap the we'll scrap the chat board. Just put it in the chat. Just one activity describing an action or activity you'd like to add release conditions to. All right, Beth said, I think I would like to add some for the major research assignments more than what's already there. Great. Abba, reading an article prior to completing a discussion to ensure they read the article and not just their colleagues' discussion. Excellent. Harish says a practice quiz to make sure students can use Lockdown browser and quizzes. Great. Great use of it, especially a practice quiz always. Elizabeth. Okay, Stephanie, Open Lab 1. Once the data sheet is submitted, use the whole class for data, labs, and tests and measurements. We use the whole class for data.
I think Beth's got a question too.
I had a question about the reading an article prior to the discussion post. I was just curious how we're going to set that as a release condition, because that's one of the things that I feel like I can't set a release condition for, like, read this thing.
Well, it would just be open it, right? I mean, you can't, yeah, it'd be, did they access it?
Yeah, I was gonna say they have to at least open it before they can get to the discussion, but can you really tell if they read it? Not really.
Except you can when they post their discussion, when you actually
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, you didn't actually read it.
Yeah.
Good.
All right. And Abba said, I would like to use my test assignment folder. Before they're able to access the assignment folder to submit their work, they should have gone through all the material posted for that test. Yeah. That would be a great use of that, restricting what they can get access to. All right. And so moving right along, I only have a few more slides to present here. It is very important, if you're using the release condition, that you explain to the students that information is going to be released upon their completing an action. It is very easy for someone to get in there and not realize that they need to do something in order to get something else to happen. So you have to set that up whichever way you feel would be best for how you are setting up your course. You can use the class progress tool to see what is actually released to the learners. And you can find class progress in course admin. All right, and here's a check-in. Square, triangle, or circle. Use the annotation tools and kind of mark up on this screen here. Is what we talked about so far. Has it squared with your thinking? Did you gain some key or important ideas? Do you have a question that's still circling in your mind? If you have a question, then feel free to either put it in the chat or come on mic.
So do we have to put it in the chat or can we ask it?
Yeah, you put on mic if you want.
So my question is, when we put these conditions, the release conditions, and we can, of course, go and look at the student view, but that's us as a student. We cannot actually go and look in a student's, account.
Correct.
So when I did that quiz thing, students would keep emailing me, where is the content? And I would keep telling them that, go take the quiz first. But, I wanted to monitor it on my end. Who was actually done doing that and who was still not there? Can we monitor it individually? Like, I don't know.
You can see through class progress what has been released to the students. So that's one way to.
No, individually. Like, for example, I have 13 students, let's say, and I want to see each one of them, each 13 of them or 10 of them, whoever they are, that okay, A has done this, B has not yet seen it, individually. So the class progress, would that help?
Yeah, because when you go to class progress, you're actually looking at individual learners.
Okay, probably I have not accessed it ever.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, for the Learn Everywhere Zula course,
yes,
that's how we were able to tell who was stuck and where they were stuck.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can see what's being released, and then you can actually reach out to those individuals directly who might.
Class progress and.
Yes, course admin, class progress. And so when I do that, I actually like to look at the content module, and it tells me exactly what's been released and not.
And there's a lot of info there when you start to look. Like if you have a lot of content on the page, now not links just like to PDFs where they had to go, but like if you remember that, like in our Learn Everywhere Zula course, some of the pages had a lot of content in it to read through. And we could see people who spent 8 seconds on the page versus 7 minutes on the page. Like you can see how long each individual learner spends on the page. We weren't monitoring this, you guys, don't worry, but it was helpful to kind of see as we were designing the course. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. That is very helpful. I'm sorry.
Yeah, when you go to that, go to admin, class project, and then play around with the class progress, because there's a lot of cool stuff there.
Yes. All right. And moving right along, I have, I should let me clear the drawings. Okay. All right, I only have a few more slides. So here's some best practices. Set up your conditions before, it's best to set it up before the students get into the course. This way you can check for mistakes in your conditions. Like Elizabeth said, once she selected a condition, she would have realized that she'd selected the wrong operator because it would have said, you know, you're saying less than. And then to answer the question again, conditions cannot be reset. So if you've got students who've actually gone in there and they've clicked on something, that condition has been met. There's no way to reset it to be unmet again, right?
I'm just going to clarify here because I'm looking at Beth's face. So you can change your conditions as you go along. What happens is when she says can't be reset, it means once a student has satisfied the condition, they've satisfied that condition. You can't clear them out or undo them like you were saying.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
You're welcome. Reading the nonverbals.
All right. Avoid unnecessary conditions. So use as few conditions as is necessary. There's going to be a slight delay processing the release conditions. For example, if you're awarding someone a badge, I've noticed that it takes a couple of minutes once they satisfy whatever the condition is to get the badge. It may take a couple of minutes for the system to actually acknowledge that they've earned that badge. So each condition is going to take a small amount of time for Brightspace to process. So here's an example. Learners are going to take several quizzes throughout the semester at scheduled times. You want a prerequisite to that to be taking a practice quiz first. So set the release condition on the first quiz. Release conditions on any subsequent quizzes would not be necessary because the purpose of the practice quiz is to allow them to get the opportunity to see how to take a quiz in Brightspace. If you've made that quiz available to them an unlimited amount of times throughout the semester, then they can always go back to that if they need to. Avoid circular references. So this would be conditions that the learners cannot satisfy. So for example, you're indicating that they have to read a document before they can post to a discussion board, but then they have to post to the discussion board before they can read that same document. They'll never be able to satisfy that condition. It's a circular reference. Avoid impossible conditions. So for example, a learner has to achieve greater than 100% on a grade item. It's going to be impossible unless you set that grade item to can exceed. Avoid contradictory conditions. So these would be conditions that cancel each other out. For example, a learner must achieve greater than 49.9% on exam 1, and they must achieve less than 50% on exam 1. Those conditions are contradictory. They're going to cancel each other out. All right, and as we wrap up, if you can type your #1 takeaway in the chat. Your #1 takeaway for today in the chat. All right, and Abba says, my #1 takeaway is to look at the class progress. Yes, Beth, importance of being transparent about the release conditions. You're not sure that you've done that, great. Elizabeth, think more about how I release content, talk to the Dean's office about remote honor code. Harish, need to check each item in a module to apply the release condition. All right, release conditions and class progress. Great. Cheryl, release conditions as a tool when building my course. Also, the Pulse app. Yes. Great. Thank you so much for that. All right. And so I just want to make sure that we've answered all questions that you might have. Are there any questions last minute questions that we can answer?
I have one more, and I'm not sure if I just kind of missed this. But can you have an entire module? You said this, right? You can't do an entire module. Like you can't do module 2 until you've done module 1.
You can set a release condition on that module.
You can.
Well, no. If they need to complete everything that is in that module, then you have to have a release condition, right, on all those items that are in that module.
All the topics, right? All the topics
right.
within
all
the module.
All the topics, correct.
Right, but
correct.
You can't say complete module 1 in order to get to module 2.
Correct.
And if you think about how Brightspace is set up, right? Module 1 is nothing but like a filing cabinet. And then each little topic in there are the folders that they can actually check off.
Okay.
All right. And you will get an evaluation through your email, so be on the lookout for that. We do value your feedback. So when you get that, if you wouldn't mind filling that out, that does inform how we move forward. And your attendance today has earned you the release conditions badge.